Welcome to Everyday Money Matters. Initially, this had a little bit of technical difficulty getting in, but we are here now and we are good to go. So we'll continue our normal programming right now and get into the discussion. I can see the usual participants all with me here, but before you start to bombard us with your questions, let me just remind you, Everyday Money Matters is brought to you in partnership with our friends at Nairametrics. And just in case you do not know who Nairametrics is the foremost leading destination for business news, analysis, and of course, latest content that helps you know the money market, understand the flow of finances, and of course, news in general. So if you want to get the best and you want to get information from Nigeria's leading destination for financial economic news, please go on to nairametrics.com. And I have with me the money team here. Olumide, good morning. How are you doing today?
Yeah, good morning, Ladi. How are you?
Fine.
Wednesday. Yeah.
We're trying to find the airline that brought you. Also, I have Loretta here as well. Good morning, Loretta. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Good morning.
All right. Thank you for joining in. Okay, so let's just get quickly to it because we are now pressed for time. So just to remind those listening at home, you can send in your questions to us on WhatsApp, okay? I think we can take questions now. But before those questions start to pour in, let me just start with this one we have here. And it's the very first on the question list. Is asking about Ponzi scheme. This person says, based on the Ponzi scheme news about 21 years old, how can one identify a Ponzi scheme? I remember a couple of, shall I say, months back or years now, there was one that really rocked Nigeria. You want to answer that, Olumide? How can one recognize Ponzi schemes?
Very good question. I think it's the usual narrative. First, if it's too good to be true, and there's no real asset backing, then the most important thing, no regulation. In fact, statistics have shown that most Ponzi schemes occur around unregulated entities. And that is why at Nairametrics, we usually advise investors and readers that before you buy any investment products, ensure it has regulatory licenses, especially in the capital market. The issue that happened about the 21-year-old boy that was allegedly charged for duping investors in the tune of about 2 billion naira is something that is very sad. But I think we should also blame these investors. How would somebody that is just 21 telling he has a decade experience in investment banking? So it means the guy was learning investment banking at 11-year-old, and returns of 60%. Even angels can't give that kind of return. Yes, some assets can give returns like that in some 4 hours, but it's usually not guaranteed. It's something that happens out of the extraordinary. And if you see, listeners need to understand something about finance. Most of these financial experts don't really know how the returns will be. So because we use behavioral science, finance is more like social science. It's like trying to track your wife or kids' movement for a year. Even though they go to the same channel of work or school, they might go through different outcomes. So I think it's very important for investors to also not to be greedy, because oftentimes those that fall to that trap are people that do little or no diligence and get exposed to this kind of scheme. So it's so sad right now.
Well said there, Olumide. Thank you. Quickly now, another question that I think, Loretta, you might want to answer for us. This person is a 45-year-old, and it says, what risk-free assets can I invest my money?
Okay. For risk, so the idea around risk-free, just so you can stay away from volatile assets, and how is now in today's world, risk-free assets, particularly if you're in Nigeria, it's chaotic right now. I would say that if you're an investor and you want to go for risk-free assets, in order to ensure that your investments, inflation does not erode your investment, you should probably go to through fund managers, because they would know which specific assets that you can invest in. So ordinarily, you have treasury bills, obviously, which are not doing well. You have bonds, but you need to know the kind of bonds to go for, and the ones that your cash in hand can allow you go for, and a myriad of all other things. So I would say, if you have a very good fund manager or mutual fund or whatever that is specifically tailored to risk-free assets, you can invest in those, because they would know how to mitigate the risks that are available while also optimizing the possible returns you can get from the investments. But I would also add that at 45, risk-free asset, you don't necessarily need to invest 100% in risk-free assets. So the idea is that there needs to be a portfolio mix. There needs to be a balance of your portfolio. So if you are 20, it can be 80% risky and 20% risk-free. At 45, I think there's still a little bit you can do in terms of investing in risky assets. Probably maybe 30% of the portfolio, 40% of the portfolio, just so you can ensure that you are still making money, because you still have a long time to live. So you don't need to be scared So I would say balance your portfolio, give it a right mix of both risky assets and risk-free assets. Yeah.
Yeah, just to add up on what Loretta said, I would also advise the listener or the person concerned to look at dividend yield stocks. You see, a lot of times we often forget that there are stocks that give you consistent income. If you look at GT, for example, GT Zenith, Fidelity, Assets, these are banks that over the years have constantly been giving investors return on their investment. So at one point, you should also look at that exposure, and you should also try and consider having steady income through forex. That's talking about euro bonds, for example. It depends on your asset holding. If your asset holding is kind of big, you can go directly to get these things. And just like Loretta said, having a fund manager at that age is very critical, because volatility will always come to play as a certain period of financial cycles. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So let's go into the Bitcoin space. Olumide. Two questions. I'm just going to combine both of them. The person said, what is the reason for the current Bitcoin market dip? That's the first one. What is the reason for the current Bitcoin market dip? And the second, I have lost over 60% of my crypto portfolio. Should I sell?
The first one, the major reason is just, I think it's no longer headline. If you've been reading Nairametrics, you understand that the Chinese crackdown on miners, China happens to be the world's biggest market for Bitcoin miners. About 70% of Bitcoin is mined in that market. So the Chinese crackdown really dampened market sentiment. Also, the Chinese government at the highest level issued a crackdown, just like what the Nigerian Apex Bank did in February 5, that financial system have no dealing with crypto assets, and that also weakened sentiment. Then the world's most powerful billionaire in the crypto space, I'm talking about Elon Musk, also issued concern about the environmental impact crypto was having, taking into consideration that Bitcoin at one point is consuming more energy than a country like Poland. Tells you that some environmentalists are already frowning at the amount of carbon prints coming out from that sector. So I think that weakened sentiment. So we saw that Bitcoin, for example, lost as much as half its value from April 14th high, and that also weakened technical analyst sentiment, and we saw that it got as low as 30. So investors that have losses about 60% means that you bought at a premium, and that's why at Nairametrics we usually advise that when you're buying an asset, you should look at three things: your implied risk, your risk for appetite, and your exposure. If your exposure is not that much, well, I would say you can still live with. If your exposure is just 5 to 10%, you will not be so concerned. But we realize that a lot of people put 40, 50% of their net assets. So little volatility will make them have heart attack, and they also get addicted to their crypto trading apps. And these are things that will breed bad habits, because when you keep watching the market day to day, you are prone to making bad decisions. So the advice is that reduce your exposure, don't be addicted to your crypto trading app. The market, Bitcoin has given returns of 3 million percent since inception, and it's still going. But at some point, to pull back, the pullback it has had now in recent time is just even less than 200-300%, and a lot of people are already willing. So I think the market is just evolving. We're in the 1.0 phase era. So investors need to be patient. This is not a quick witch scheme, and we always want you that not to get too exposed. Thank you.
Okay, can I add to the second question on whether now is a good time to pull out your investments? There are people that invested not at a premium, but also got huge dips because of the kind of cryptos they had invested in. So there are some really small altcoins. I don't know if I can say shitcoins on air, but there's some altcoins that have ordinarily not been stable. So if you had invested in something like, no, I'm not going to call them names, but if you have invested in crypto assets, just like the stock market, if you invested in assets that have strong fundamentals, or invested in cryptos that have long-term benefits, that have long-term use, I would advise there's no point pulling up, because you know that this cryptocurrencies are going to be valid for the future, right? So you know that they are still going to be in high demand. So this is just a volatile season. It will eventually bounce back because you have done your research and you know that this crypto is great. It has a good fundamental, it has good use of the future. But if you have invested in a number of those very small, all those ones that you can buy at less than $1, or there's a lot of them, you might need to also watch the market, because this was a particularly big hit. And so it means that just like the way the stock market works, I would say that there are some assets, while most assets will survive, there are some that will take a hit for a long period of time. And I think it should also be some kind of warning or an advice to people to say that if you're investing in crypto, then you should also know the kind of assets you're investing in. Fine. The idea is that you get an asset and you want it to make you, 50x richer. You want it to go really far. And that's why you invested in those assets that are very cheap to get right now. But you also need to know that, if their fundamentals are not great, when there are hits like this, they are the ones that might take a longer time to go through, and they are the ones that can make your investment portfolio really, like you see, like you've lost 70%. Yeah, that's because those guys took a bigger hit than Bitcoin or Ethereum and all of that. So I would say, just the same way we watch the stock market to know the ones with good fundamental, crypto market to know the ones with good fundamentals by place, then you do not need to pull out, as long as you believe, you still believe you're still a believer in cryptocurrency.
All right, thank you very much. Quickly now, let's go on to a few other questions. This one is Grace from Oibo says, please, how do I invest 100,000 Naira? It has been in the bank for about 8 months now, but no interest is coming in. The name is Grace.
I'm going to hijack this question before Olumide tells this person that 100,000 Naira is too small a money to try to invest anything. Yes, you actually need a lot of money to invest, yeah, but I would say there is still so much you can do with 100,000 Naira. There are, what? Let's stop making people that don't have enough money feel like they don't have options. I would say even with your 100,000 Naira, there's still a little bit of balance in your portfolio that you can make. So with 100,000 Naira, if you decide that 60%, I'm paying 60% to risky assets, well, 60,000 Naira can buy you a little bit of small cryptos. Yeah, just keep them by the side, as long as you're holding them for the long term, and then you can keep adding. So this month added, it was 100K, or you put 60K in the crypto market. Then the next month you can add another 60,000 Naira in the crypto market, and then it just keeps building up until one day you have the money and you invest in crypto at the right, you get a whole lot. And then for the percentage of, let's say, 40,000 Naira that you are keeping safe, or maybe at this point you don't really care about the 400,000 Naira, you can afford to take huge risks, just move the 40,000 Naira into some agro-tech assets that will give you returns. Now, same thing with, you would also need to be careful with the largely unstandardized apps. So if you're investing in agrotech, you need to invest in the ones that have a long-term history of, paying returns on time and things like that. But you need to still also know that whenever issues occur, if anything does happen, while you have, there's a possibility of turning your 40,000 naira to 100,000 naira in 2 months, because some of these agrotech firms give huge returns. You also need to understand that there's a risk element involved. So I think the question should be around, what does that 100,000 naira mean to you? If it's something that you can take huge risks on, you can spread between crypto and agrotech. If it's something you don't want to take a risk on, well, your bank account and the treasury bill market, I don't know what's much of a difference there. So I would say understand what your objective is.
I've even seen fund managers who have asked me to bring 50,000 naira a month, and they were going to invest it for me. So
there's also that. So you can, and the great thing about fund managers is you can tell them exactly your investment mandate. That's exactly what you want. I want to be able to secure, and I want this money to be safe within the next 6 months and yield a level of return. They will invest in the assets that will give you that. And if you want to take risks, they will also invest in assets that have the possibility or probability of increasing your 100,000 naira. Yeah.
Olumide, I know you have a different opinion though, typically.
Yeah, I do, but I think what people need to understand is that investments are not the only option to get wealthy, or it's just more of a leverage. And if you notice, most of the world's most powerful people, they use investment as a form of leverage, not a means to get wealthy. And that is why I advise that the easiest point is increasing your skills, increasing your optimal capacity. Because, okay, if you want an investment that will give you secured returns, you can't get nothing higher than 20%. And you're talking about that amount of money without foot abuse, without do anything sizable.
Maybe
that's my own. Yeah. So I feel that despite the fact that though not everybody earns a lot of money, I think we should start from the easiest point. The easiest point is the real sector, intellectual skills, optimizing your intellectual capacity is the easiest point. 100,000 naira is pretty like $200, and that can even buy you some liquid stocks in the United States, or some debt instruments. So whatever you're saying, you need to consider that inflation is biting hard. Already, the 100,000 naira is no more 100,000. You said you kept it 8 months. So inflation has broken down 20%. And if you look at the valuation must have taken another 18% of that. So we are talking about the value of that money already going by a third. So, that's my bias towards macro investing. But, like Coretta said, there's no single channel. There are a lot of channels you can use. So
you could also maybe she could also consider crowdfunding, all this, maybe like.
Yeah, but it comes to risk. Most of them are not regulated. She should be ready to lose her funds. They are not regulated. That's what we're saying. That you see, things that give high returns usually in Nigeria are usually the non-risky assets. Because crowdfunding, I've had this in a crowdfunding that has a set regulation. I'm yet to see. You understand? So
don't worry.
She ready to lose her money. Yeah, she ready to lose her money. That's the thing. If you're ready to lose your money, you can get investments that will give you as high as what Loretta is saying. But I am more of a conservative investor, So I look at things that are more realistic, to me. Yeah.
Loretta is just laughing at you. Okay, let's see if we can sneak in one last question. We just have about a minute to go. This one is asking, what apps can I use to trade Nigerian stocks? Anybody want to answer that?
Oh, there's so many. I think we don't due to company policy, we don't mention names, but any investment bank right now has a trading app. And yeah, they are all regulated, so you can trade Nigerian stocks on that. And if you say you want to trade US stocks, the cheapest US stocks to trade now, you can trade it on the blockchain. So we have crypto exchanges that also trade these tokenized apps. But if you want to go a bit risky, we have middlemen apps that, though they are working out their regulation, you can also, so the options are wide. It all depends on what you want to do. But I advise you to go for the regulated trading apps. They will give you good night sleeps, and they are very functional, very basic. They have a very functional customer care team that will always be around the clock, most working days, to give you the right tools to navigate your.
Yeah, you can also check Nairametrics for a list of apps. I'm sure we've written on that many times.
Yeah.
All
right, guys. Thank you so much for your time. Do apologize that we couldn't catch this flight early enough. Hopefully we can get better next week. Till we see again, let me just remind our listeners and those who are just joining us for the first time, there's a Stock Select newsletter that Nairametrics gives to subscribers. It helps you in your investment journey. You discover market-beating stocks. You learn how to invest with confidence. You get recommendations, what to buy, what to sell, what to hold, market intelligence, the stock market in general, and succinctly written analysis of company results, corporate actions, and the likes. You'll get all of that. So to subscribe, just go to ssn.nairametrics.com, and you're going to get that once you subscribe.